Hey friends, let's drift into something ridiculous tonight. Because if you've ever wondered what it would actually feel like to spend a night inside a medieval brothel, the short answer is, you wouldn't. Not because anyone would harm you, but because the place itself feels like a living organism determined to test every one of your modern-day comforts at once. The moment you push open the crooked wooden door, whose hinges complain like a monk forced to wake before dawn, you instantly understand that survival here is more about mental endurance than physical safety. Inside, the temperature hits you first. It's warmer than necessary, not from any fireplace, but from the collective heat of too many bodies, too many animals, and too many decisions that should have been reconsidered. The air feels like it's been reused several times before reaching you, carrying with it the faint scent of ale, sweat, damp wool, something herbal that may or may not still be legal, and a background hint of pottage, the kind of thick medieval stew that looks like it has opinions. Lanterns hang along the walls, glowing in a tired amber hue, their flames wobbling like they're reconsidering their career choices. Shadows ripple over the uneven floorboards, and every table is occupied by someone who is laughing a little too loudly, sighing dramatically, or staring at a cup of ale with the intensity of someone receiving bad news from a doctor. Your nose, bless its innocence, tries to make sense of the layered fragrance. At first it refuses, staging a tiny emotional protest. But after a minute or two, it gives up and accepts its fate, either adapting or shutting down entirely. Hard to tell. The people here are not the polished townsfolk you see at the market. Every face has a story, usually one involving bad luck, poor planning, or a talent for making the wrong choice at the perfect moment. In the corner, there's a man with a beard that looks like it's having a crisis of identity. His eyes carry the distant expression of someone who has been thinking too deeply for too long. He insists on telling anyone in a 3-foot radius about the time he almost became a legend, though the incident itself appears to involve a boat, a storm, and a tragic misunderstanding of how tides work. Then there's Brutus, the dog the size of a misplaced hay bale. He doesn't belong to anyone, yet somehow belongs to everyone. Brutus chooses his resting spot like an aging nobleman selecting a throne. No one questions him. His tail alone could sweep an entire table clean, and has several times. Despite living in constant pandemonium, he maintains a quiet dignity, occasionally releasing a long, judgmental sigh if someone steps too close or laughs in a way he personally disapproves of. The workers move like they've unlocked a secret ability in a video game. They weave through tables with trays of ale, bowls of something steaming, and piles of laundry that look like they survived a minor catastrophe. Their ability to dodge wandering hands, flying elbows, collapsing stools, and the occasional runaway chicken is nothing short of athletic. In this place, charm matters, but reflexes are what keep you alive. And then there's the madam. She appears the way gravity does, constantly present, impossible to ignore. You never see her enter the room, she is simply there. Her wooden spoon, older than most kingdoms, taps lightly against her palm. With a single glance, she can identify who spilled the ale, who is pretending to be innocent, and who tried to hide the chicken under his cloak earlier. She is the kind of woman who can hear secrets through walls, and everyone knows better than to test it. Even if you try to sit quietly, the room insists on keeping you awake. Sounds blend together, clinking mugs, boots scraping against wood, half-hearted declarations of eternal love, the lute in the corner wrestling with melodies it doesn't quite believe in, and soft conversations drifting between gossip, complaints, and existential questioning. It becomes a kind of rhythm, uneven but strangely lulling, until the goat bleats at the exact wrong moment, ruining any chance you had at drifting off. And somehow, this is only the beginning of the night. The night begins, the chaos guests you didn't ask for. If you think the medieval brothel gets calmer once you've settled in, that's adorable, truly. Because the later the hour gets, the stranger the characters become. It's like the universe looked at the brothel and said, yes, this is where I shall deposit every person having a weird night. And the brothel doesn't just accept them, it absorbs them like a sponge made entirely of gossip and regret. Let's start with the spies. Oh yes, spies absolutely come here, though you never realize they're spies until about 3 hours after they've left, and someone says, Huh, that guy did ask a lot of questions for someone who supposedly just wanted soup. They sit in corners pretending to drink, swirling ale around like it's a fancy wine tasting. Their clothes are always just a little too clean for this place. They nod along to conversations, ask completely innocent-sounding questions like, "So, what does the mayor really think about taxes? Does the bishop ever get into fights? What's the cook's political stance?" By the time you realize you've told them more than you meant, about your neighbor's stolen goat, your madam's secret stash of honey, or the fact that one worker definitely isn't named Marjorie, they're gone. Vanished. Off to start 10 new rumors and possibly a civil war. Then there's the recruiter, the guy who bursts in loudly promising glory, riches, and, the biggest red flag of all, clean drinking water. He's recruiting for something vague and ominous like a crusade, a pilgrimage, or an expedition to a place known only as the wetlands of absolutely no return. He looks around, laughs too loudly, claps people on the back with the enthusiasm of someone who doesn't get enough sunlight, and says things like, "Strong arms needed. Anyone willing to travel far and wide? No experience necessary." It sounds exciting until you hear what happened to the last guy who joined one of these adventures. He spent 3 weeks digging drainage ditches behind a monastery and came back with sunburn, back pain, and a new appreciation for indoor plumbing, which he still doesn't have. Most brothel staff immediately develop urgent chores or sudden headaches the moment the recruiter appears. Others simply disappear behind curtains, under tables, or behind Brutus, who is conveniently large enough to hide 3 people. But recruiting is nothing compared to the worst visitor of them all, the blackmailer. Blackmailers don't drink, they don't flirt, they don't laugh. They just observe, constantly. Like owls with opposable thumbs and moral bankruptcy. They make notes, actual notes, on parchment. They watch for secret trysts, overhear slips of the tongue, spot letters left too close to candles. And their weapon? Not fists, not swords, information. They wield gossip like a knight wields a sword, except knights at least have the courtesy to tell you when they're about to stab you. Blackmailers just smile politely and talk about the weather, while deciding exactly how much your reputation is worth in silver. Whenever one of these information gremlins shows up, the entire brothel shifts into survival mode. Conversations get shorter. Laughter gets quieter. People suddenly find urgent reasons to reorganize shelves, sweep corners, or stare into space with great concentration. Even Brutus narrows his eyes at them. And the madam? She becomes a force of nature. She weaves between tables, innocently cleaning, which is madam code for side-eyeing every single conversation like she's listening through walls. If she overhears something she doesn't like, she might accidentally spill ale on whatever document the blackmailer was holding. Or she'll start a dramatic sing-along loud enough to drown out whatever stupid deal is happening in the corner. Sometimes she even sends Brutus to sit beside the blackmailer. Because nothing ruins intimidation like a giant dog drooling on your boots. So what do you do when you spot one of these unwanted guests? Simple. Pretend you're asleep, busy, very hard of hearing, or temporarily employed as just the cook. No one, absolutely no one, ever suspects the cook. When morning comes, the night's chaos slips out quietly into the fog. But the stories linger, traded between the workers like currency. Because in this place, every rumor is both entertainment and survival. In a medieval brothel, secrets aren't just dangerous, they're the only thing more valuable than hot bread. Medieval medicine, or why you should never stub your toe here. So, after you've survived the spies, dodged the blackmailers, and pretended to be temporarily deaf to avoid joining a questionable crusade, the next disaster waiting for you in a medieval brothel is medicine. And by medicine, I mean creative suffering with herbs. Let's get this out of the way immediately. A medieval brothel has many strengths. Medical expertise is not one of them. If you get sick, injured, bruised, or simply look too pale for the madam's liking, You're about to enter a world where the cure is often just as terrifying as the illness. The medical kit nobody should trust. There is a medical kit, technically. It lives in the kitchen next to the vinegar, the ladle, and the jar labeled "Do not open unless you hate yourself." Its contents include a jar of leeches that wiggle like they know too much, a clump of dried herbs that expired before the Black Death, a mostly empty bottle of vinegar strong enough to melt a horseshoe, a wooden spoon with more dents than a knight's helmet. If you're wondering why the spoon is in the medical kit, congratulations, you're new here. That spoon has been used for everything: applying poultices, stirring potions, disciplining customers, warding off spirits, and occasionally removing leeches when they latch onto the wrong body part. Leeches, the medieval multi-purpose tool. Leeches are the answer to everything. Sore throat? Leeches. Fever? More leeches. Strange bump? Extra leeches and a prayer. They're like medieval duct tape, universally applied and often misused. If the madam catches you looking even slightly under the weather, she'll squint at you like a disappointed ant and say, "You look pale, fetch the jar." You'll protest, of course. Everyone protests. But the leeches go on anyway. Herbal remedies nobody should trust. Herbs are everywhere. Workers carry little bundles of lavender, mint, thyme, tied together with string and blind optimism. Someone will insist you drink a tea made from willow bark. It cures headaches, they say. Does it? Absolutely not. But the bitterness distracts you long enough to forget why you're crying. Trouble sleeping? Poppy seeds in warm milk, just a pinch. Too much and you'll hallucinate that the goat is running for mayor again. And don't forget the onions. Onions go in socks, under pillows, on bruises, on bites, and sometimes just rubbed on your forehead to improve your humors. Do they work? Maybe emotionally. Honey, the miracle cure that fixes everything except your life choices. If you get cut, scraped, bitten, stabbed by accident, stabbed on purpose, or attacked by a disgruntled chicken, the first treatment is always a clean rag, if they can find one, a slap of honey mixed with herbs. Honey is sticky, sweet, and apparently magical. Medieval people believed it cured everything except heartbreak and taxes. If it doesn't help, at least the flies will keep you company. But if the wound looks bad, if the edges look swollen or the pus is speaking Latin, you're in for the worst remedy of all. Cauterization. Fire solves everything. Yes, a hot iron, heated until it glows like the gates of hell. Pressed onto your wound while somebody says, "Don't scream too loud, the neighbors are listening." Medieval anesthesia is a wooden stick you're supposed to bite down on while questioning every decision that led you here. Success is defined as the patient didn't immediately die. The barber surgeon, haircuts and trauma. If things get really out of hand, you go to the barber surgeon. He has rusty knives, cheerful confidence, no formal training, and a devastating lack of self-doubt. He sharpens blades, pulls teeth, trims hair, and occasionally attempts surgery on days he's feeling brave. The best you can hope for is that he's in a good mood and has recently washed his hands, or at least wiped them on his apron. Medicine as a group activity. Everyone in the brothel becomes an amateur nurse at some point. No one knows what they're doing, but everyone has a story about a cousin who cured a fever by sleeping with a silver coin in their mouth, or an uncle who cured the pox by burying a toad under the doorstep. Superstition fills the gaps where science should be. So the next time you sneeze, be grateful for modern medicine. Because in a medieval brothel, your real options are herbs, leeches, binder, prayer, fire, or pure denial. And honestly, denial works best. Mourning in a medieval brothel is less of a new day and more of a casual inventory of the damage. Dawn doesn't so much arrive as it leaks through the cracks in the shutters, weak and apologetic, like it knows it's intruding on a disaster. The lamps gutter out. Brutus the dog is snoring in the hearth ashes. And somewhere in the common room, a customer is lying face down in an empty ale barrel, mumbling about eternal love for a barmaid who has already gone home. Before you can even think about breakfast, there is the obligatory full-body inspection. You check your pockets, your socks, your dignity, and whatever coins you manage to keep from falling into the straw. Socks are never where you left them. Sometimes a worker wakes up wearing someone else's left shoe. Sometimes the goat is wearing someone's right shoe. No one questions it anymore. Bruises are expected. Half of them you can't explain. Maybe you slipped on a turnip. Maybe a drunk customer gestured too enthusiastically. Maybe you bumped into the madam's wooden spoon. All valid possibilities. In a place like this, injury is less of a surprise and more of an occupational detail. Then comes the ritual known as the coin count. You dump your pouch onto the table and pray it weighs more than it sounds. The house always takes its cut, and Brutus always gets breakfast. Whatever remains is your earnings, though earnings is a generous word. Sometimes it's enough for a bit of bread. On a good week, an egg. If you are truly flush with luck, maybe a sliver of cheese so thin you could use it as a bookmark. After coins comes the breakfast gamble. The kitchen smells vaguely edible, and the pot of pottage is bubbling on the fire, thick enough to hold a spoon upright on its own. On a good day, the stew includes turnips, herbs, and something that was once meat. On a bad day, it includes turnips, herbs, and something that is still staring at you. Workers quietly inspect their bowls, fishing out tails, bones, feathers, and once, memorably, something that squeaked. No one complains. Complaining means being volunteered to help cook tomorrow's pot, and that is worse than eating it. The conversation over breakfast is the true entertainment. People whisper about who earned the best tip, who mysteriously came back with more bruises than usual, and who has been banned from singing for the next 3 nights. Every morning generates at least 3 new rumors. A nobleman disguised as a peasant disguised as a nobleman, someone hiding under the stairs, someone stealing honey, someone caught by Brutus while stealing honey. Repairing outfits is the next task of the day. Every garment in the brothel is held together by luck, hope, and mismatched thread. Sleeves require sewing, stockings need retying, and if your tunic smells offensively enough, you may be pressured into washing it, though washing is merely code for beat it with a stick and hope for improvement. Laundry piles move between rooms like migrating herds. No one knows which clothing belongs to whom anymore. The madam claims she can identify every single sock in the building. Most people just take her word for it. Despite the exhaustion, the morning has its comforts. The workers gather around the hearth, sharing stale bread and more stale jokes. The madam sometimes softens enough to pour an extra cup of weak ale for someone who had a particularly brutal night. Even the goat behaves, as if aware that morale is fragile and one more chewed sleeve might cause a revolt. There is a quiet camaraderie here, a shared understanding that everyone made it through another night of chaos and survived with most of their limbs and half their patience. For a brief moment, before the brothel roars back to life, it feels almost peaceful. Then the rooster crows, the door creaks open, and the cycle begins again. Love, in theory, sounds like something sweet and poetic. But love in a medieval brothel is about as stable as a 3-legged stool on a slippery floor. It happens, occasionally, inconveniently, and almost always disastrously. The wise workers will tell you love is a terrible idea here, but terrible ideas are practically the house specialty. The story usually begins with a newcomer, someone who wanders in with wide eyes, a soft heart, and the emotional resilience of a damp parchment. They think they'll keep their hearts safe. They swear they won't get attached. They definitely believe they will not fall for someone who shares a room with 3 co-workers, a cat, and a goat with anger issues. Within a week, they are writing poetry on the back of laundry scraps and sighing at the moon like they expect it to answer. Sometimes the love-struck individual is a customer, a traveling poet with a tragic haircut, a merchant's son who smells faintly of cinnamon and bad decisions, a nobleman trying to hide his identity but failing spectacularly. He'll bring flowers pilfered from a churchyard or plums that may or may not have been stolen from a fruit cart. He'll leave them on a straw mattress and pretend this is romantic instead of slightly sticky. Then comes the serenading phase. A lute appears out of nowhere. A song is played, often badly. The last time someone tried a love ballad, the goat interrupted halfway through with a bleat so perfectly timed it seemed intentional. Even Brutus lifted his head in disbelief before going back to sleep. Meanwhile, the object of affection tries desperately to maintain a straight face. Brothel workers are not easily impressed. They've seen men cry, pray, complain, and spill entire mugs of ale on themselves. Romance is not their first rodeo. A dramatic proclamation of love will usually be met with something like, "That's nice. Will you be paying for your drink?" Still, genuine affection does sometimes bloom in the cracks between chaos. Maybe it's a shared joke, a long conversation after the lamps dim, or a quiet promise made in the middle of a hectic night. These small moments are the kind that keep tired workers going. A whispered compliment, a stolen slice of bread, a shared blanket on a particularly cold evening. But reality always arrives. A customer leaves the town and never returns. A worker decides they're done with moon-eyed troubadours and wants someone who doesn't get blisters from holding a quill. Someone else simply falls in love with a person who has access to better food. The heartbreak is predictable, but it never stops people from trying again. Hope is stubborn like that. And then there are the dramatic scenes. Jealous lovers challenging each other in the common room. Someone making a drunken proposal in the middle of the night with half the brothel watching. Someone else accidentally accepting the proposal because they thought it was a joke. Arguments erupt. Ale spills. At least 2 people storm out. The madam must intervene, usually with her spoon. She always says the same thing. Love is a luxury. Rent is not. Harsh, but fair. Still, there are moments when even she softens. She's been known to let 2 sweethearts share the better blanket once or twice. Only once or twice, mind you. Sentimentality is expensive. Rumors circulate about couples who ran away together and lived happily ever after. No one knows if they're true. Most likely, they moved 2 streets away and opened a laundry stall. But the stories persist because they're comforting. In a place built on noise, mess, and questionable stew, even the faintest idea of romance feels like a stolen moment of peace. So, if you ever find yourself drifting into a medieval brothel with a romantic heart, remember this. Love here is messy, unpredictable, and often ridiculous. It can warm a winter night or ruin an entire week. But if you're lucky, you might catch a moment that feels real, even if it lasts only until dawn. And dawn, as always, arrives far too soon. Clothes in a medieval brothel have one job: stay on. They fail constantly. Wardrobe malfunctions here are so common they might as well be another nightly event, like spilled ale or someone accidentally proposing marriage to the wrong person. Buttons are a luxury item, rare enough to be treated like small pieces of treasure. If you see a real button on someone's tunic, it either belonged to their grandmother or was stolen in a moment of exceptionally bold decision-making. Most clothing relies on laces, long, unpredictable strings that seem to have been designed by a frustrated cat. 1. Every night begins with at least one person frantically trying to tie, retie, or repair some part of their outfit. You'll see someone wrestling with their corset like it's a wild animal. Someone else is swearing under their breath while trying to rethread an impossible knot. And Marjorie, there is always a Marjorie, is calmly fixing her bodice with the efficiency of a person who has done this every day of her life since childhood. The trouble with laces is that they have a sense of humor. They catch on chairs, elbows, doorknobs, stray nails, passing customers, chickens, and occasionally Brutus's tail. One wrong move and your sleeve decides to part ways with your shoulder. Take a sharp turn and suddenly your skirt has collapsed around your ankles. No one is ever surprised anymore. It's said that the fastest way to end up half undressed in the brothel isn't a customer. It's a loose lace with an agenda. By midnight, at least 3 people will have experienced some combination of the following: a lace snapping loudly and dramatically, a sleeve launching itself into the air like it has aspirations of flight, a stocking sliding slowly, traitorously down the leg, a petticoat that decides it no longer wants to be involved and simply exits the situation. These events are met not with panic, but with resigned sighs, quick laughter, or, if it happens in front of a customer, an awkward attempt to pretend it was intentional. The brothel handyman is the closest thing this place has to a superhero. He moves through the house armed with needles, strong thread, and the patience of a saint. He repairs sleeves, replaces broken laces, tightens corsets, reattaches clasps, and occasionally rescues someone who managed to tie themselves to a chair. People talk about his mending abilities the same way others talk about miracle healers. He's also the keeper of spare laces, which are valued more highly than tips on slow nights. A spare lace can save you from humiliation, injury, or a very awkward conversation. There's always a line outside his makeshift workshop, especially on festival nights, when clothing is expected to withstand dancing, laughing, drinking, and dodging at least one minor brawl. Customers are no safer. After enough ale, half of them forget how their own tunics work. They attempt to undo knots with too much confidence, then ask for help when everything gets tangled. Some insist they know a trick for untying laces with one hand, which rarely works and usually ends in a messy spiral of embarrassment. The room often ends up watching this attempt with the same fascination reserved for slow-motion disasters. Some workers have developed methods to survive the nightly struggle. A few pre-tie complicated knots before their shift begins. Others swear by double-lacing everything. The most experienced workers can slip in and out of outfits behind a curtain in near total darkness without losing a single ribbon. They are legends. But accidents remain unavoidable. Once, a wardrobe malfunction ended with a worker falling directly into the pottage pot in the kitchen. She emerged looking like a disgruntled turnip stew monster. The story is retold every week and never gets less funny. Despite the chaos, wardrobe mishaps bring everyone together. Workers help tie up one another's sleeves, adjust hems, rethread stays, and offer quick fixes when disaster strikes mid-shift. It becomes a shared ritual, a kind of unspoken teamwork forged by the knowledge that at any moment your own clothing could betray you. In a medieval brothel, fashion isn't glamorous, it's survival, it's improvisation, it's hoping your laces behave long enough for you to earn your evening's coin, and above all, it's learning to laugh when they don't. Petty crime in a medieval brothel isn't a problem, it's a way of life. In a place where wages are low, customers are flaky, and dinner is a bowl of something that occasionally moves on its own, everyone develops at least a small talent for creative resource acquisition. That's the polite term. The less polite term is stealing whatever isn't nailed down. The first rule you learn is simple. Guard your purse. Tie it tight, hide it under your clothes, sit on it if you have to. People have lost money pouches tied around their own necks. Some swear there's a legendary thief who once stole a coin bag from a man who was still awake and looking directly at him. No one knows if it's true, but everyone behaves as if it is. Shoes vanish constantly. A decent pair of boots can buy favors, food, or a night off from cleaning duty. Even worn-out ones can be traded for gossip or half a bowl of broth. It's common to wake up and discover the shoes on your feet are not the shoes you went to sleep with, leading to a quiet morning exchange where workers shuffle around asking, "Has anyone seen a left boot with a hole at the toe?" Clothing, bread, soap, herbs, mending thread, everything is a potential target. Most thefts are small, desperate, and mildly irritating rather than malicious. Someone steals a crust of bread because they're starving. Someone pockets the good needle from the sewing kit. Someone takes the last slice of turnip because the cook said there wouldn't be more until next week. Breakfast is especially dangerous. If you leave your bowl unattended for even a second, it will vanish. Entire meals have disappeared from under people's noses. There's a running joke that if you find an extra piece of meat in your stew, it's probably been stolen and returned at least twice before reaching you. The most reliable thief in the house, however, isn't a person. It's Brutus. The dog steals anything edible, anything soft, and anything he finds vaguely interesting. He has a special talent for sleeping on top of stolen goods like a furry, drooling dragon guarding his hoard. If something goes missing, the first place you check is under Brutus. More often than not, that's where you'll find it, slightly chewed but recoverable. The goat is a close second. He doesn't steal because he wants to. He steals because he believes anything left on the floor belongs to him. Socks, apples, gloves, 2 pages of someone's diary. Once, he even dragged away an entire apron. He doesn't hide what he takes. He proudly eats it in the middle of the room, glaring at anyone who suggests sharing. The madam tolerates petty theft the way a weary mother tolerates children fighting over toys. She sighs, rolls her eyes, and occasionally whacks someone with her spoon. She keeps a lost and found box behind the bar. though most of the items in it were probably stolen from that box to begin with. The box contains mismatched gloves, scraps of cloth, rings of questionable origin, and a jar of pickled onions no one has claimed for weeks. When something truly important disappears, a brothel-wide search begins. This is no casual affair. It's an event. Accusations fly, people swear oaths, entire alliances form and collapse within minutes. Someone claims they saw the missing object near the hearth. Someone else swears it was by the stairs. Meanwhile, the thief is usually participating enthusiastically, pointing fingers at everyone except themselves. Eventually, the missing item turns up, usually behind a curtain, beneath a mattress, or, predictably, under Brutus. By then, everyone has forgotten why it mattered so much in the first place. Petty theft isn't just tolerated, it's woven into the social fabric of the brothel. People use it to trade favors, share jokes, and build the strange camaraderie that comes from surviving this chaotic place together. If you can't find your breakfast, borrow someone else's. If your shirt goes missing, check the laundry pile. If your soap disappears, assume someone needed it more than you did. And if you ever catch someone in the act, the proper response isn't outrage. It's a resigned sigh and the muttered phrase heard every morning in this house. Put it back when you're done. Because in the medieval brothel, nothing really belongs to anyone. Everything is temporary, negotiable, and subject to being stolen by the goat at any moment. Animals in a medieval brothel aren't pets, they're co-workers. Unpaid, untrained, unpredictable co-workers with a strong sense of entitlement and absolutely no respect for personal space. If you imagine a brothel filled with perfume, velvet pillows, and soft music, please adjust that picture. Now, add a goat, add chickens, add a dog the size of a small boulder. Then imagine trying to sleep while all three argue about dominance at 3 in the morning. Let's start with the goat. No one knows where he came from. One day he simply appeared, walked through the front door like he owned the place, and stayed. He has no name because calling him anything would acknowledge his authority, and the staff refused to give him that kind of power. He already behaves like the landlord, stomping through rooms, eating anything left unattended, and testing the structural integrity of furniture with his horns. He especially enjoys chewing on tunic hems, blanket corners, and the occasional important document. At night, he becomes a bed warmer, though not by invitation. If he finds your blanket on the floor, he claims the entire thing for himself. If he finds your mattress empty for even a moment, he lies on it, daring you to disagree. His judgmental bleat has the emotional weight of a disappointed grandmother and the volume of a herald's trumpet. Then there are the chickens. Technically, they're supposed to stay outside, but the chickens didn't read the rules and wouldn't care if they did. They wander through the brothel as they please, bursting through curtains, knocking over tankards, and offering unsolicited commentary in the form of furious clucking. At night, they roost wherever the temperature feels acceptable, on rafters, on shelves, or on someone's chest if they fall asleep too deeply. Nothing wakes a person faster than opening their eyes to find a chicken staring at them with the intensity of a suspicious magistrate. Eggs occasionally appear in strange places, under a bed, behind a bucket, once inside a shoe. Finding an egg is considered a blessing unless the goat gets to it first. He always does. Brutus, the house dog, completes the trio. He is part guard, part rug, part emotional support beast. He picks his sleeping spot based on warmth and the likelihood of being fed. Some nights, he curls up by the hearth. Other nights, he sprawls across 3 sleeping mats, trapping the workers there until morning. He snores like a blacksmith's bellows and drools like a man who's forgotten how gravity works. Despite his size, Brutus is strangely sentimental. If he decides you're his favorite for the night, he will place one enormous paw on your chest and refuse to move. People have slept entire nights pinned under his weight, unable to breathe properly, but too afraid to disturb him. But he's loyal. If anyone shouts too loudly or a customer gets out of hand, Brutus is there, rumbling like distant thunder, ready to intervene or, at the very least, shed on their clothing. Cats come and go. No brothel is complete without a few. They slip through open windows, steal scraps from the kitchen, and glare at customers with aristocratic disdain. They perform essential pest control, though their definition of pest sometimes includes the lute player or any human foolish enough to disturb their nap. Living with animals means developing habits. Always check your shoes before putting them on. Guard your bread. Expect feathers in your hair. Never leave anything edible, shiny, or vaguely chewable within the goat's line of sight. If you hear whispering at night, it might be rats organizing a coup. If you feel something warm at your feet, it might be Brutus. If it bleats angrily when you shift positions, it's the goat. Good luck negotiating with him. Yet for all the chaos, the animals bring comfort. On cold nights, their warmth is more reliable than the fireplace. Their antics provide entertainment when the workday drags on. Their presence, chaotic as it is, fills the brothel with a strange sense of community. In a world where people come and go without warning, animals stay. They complain, they steal, they make a mess, but they stay. Some nights, when the wind rattles the shutters and the candles flicker low, the workers curl up on the straw mats, Brutus sprawled across their feet, chickens muttering softly from the rafters, the goat curled smugly on someone's blanket. It isn't peaceful. It isn't quiet. It certainly isn't clean. But for a moment, it feels like something close to safety. That, in a place like this, is its own kind of miracle. After just one night in the brothel, you begin plotting your escape. Not because you're dramatic, but because survival instinct kicks in around the moment you wake up with a chicken on your chest, a bruise you can't explain, and the goat chewing something that definitely used to be yours. By dawn, even the most loyal worker has considered running away at least once. Escape fantasies are a tradition here. Everyone has them. They come in 3 flavors: marrying a customer, running off with the lute player, or hiding until spring. All 3 are terrible ideas, but that doesn't stop anyone from daydreaming. The marriage plan is the favorite. Someone imagines a wealthy merchant falling madly in love, sweeping them off their feet, and whisking them away to a cozy cottage stocked with warm bread and 0 livestock. Reality, however, tends to differ. Customers who claim to be wealthy usually aren't. Customers who promise marriage usually can't remember doing so the next morning. And customers who flirt too sweetly often leave without paying their tab. Still, hope survives on scraps. Then there's the lute player, a romantic figure if you squint hard enough. He sings tragic songs, travels between towns, and carries the aura of someone who has never paid taxes. But running away with him comes with hazards: sleeping in carts, eating food described as experimental, and listening to lute practice every night. The charm fades quickly when you realize he owns only 1 pair of socks, and both are damp. Hiding in a barrel might be the most practical plan, which says a lot about the available options. Plenty of workers have tried slipping into the storage room and curling up behind the ale casks. It never works. Someone always needs something from the storage room, and the goat has a 6th sense for locating anyone attempting to nap in peace. If the goat finds you, he either bleats until the whole house arrives or decides your hiding spot is now his personal throne. More ambitious escape plans occasionally surface. Someone will whisper, "What if we all leave together?" The idea lasts until they remember nobody is willing to abandon their favorite blanket, or give up the single sharp knife, or walk away from Brutus, who will absolutely guilt-trip them by following for 3 blocks and whimpering dramatically. There's also the mythical escape tunnel. According to rumor, it runs beneath the brothel, emerging somewhere near the old mill or possibly the pigsty. No one agrees on the details. Everyone has a cousin who swears they once saw the entrance, though no one has produced actual evidence. People like imagining an escape tunnel. It makes the nights feel less eternal. The truth is, leaving is harder than it sounds. The world outside isn't kinder. The roads are full of thieves, taxes, and people who don't tip. At least in the brothel, you know which dangers to expect. The madam might scold you, but she won't let you starve. Brutus may snore, but he'll also defend you. The goat may chew on your belongings, but he never judges your life choices. Loudly, anyway. So most escape plans dissolve into nothing. Someone vows to leave at dawn. Dawn arrives. They stretch, yawn, eat a bowl of lumpy pottage and say, "Maybe next week." Someone else prepares to sneak out at midnight, but falls asleep in their boots before they reach the door. Another swears they're leaving for a better job in the next town, but forgets to pack and gets distracted by an argument about laundry. Deep down, everyone knows they're staying for reasons that are maddeningly sentimental. The brothel might be chaotic, drafty, loud, and occasionally on fire, but it's familiar. These are their people, their routines, their disasters. The place may be falling apart at the seams, but it's theirs. And if someone does manage to leave, truly leave, they're always remembered. Every once in a while, someone will lower their voice and say, "Do you remember Elsie? She left with that baker." Then comes the debate. Did she find happiness? Did she leave on impulse? Did she really marry him? Or was it just a rumor started because she liked bread? No one knows. And no one looks too closely. Sometimes it's better to keep legends vague and comforting. In the meantime, the escape plans continue. Someone is always whispering about a fresh opportunity. Someone is always eyeing the horizon. And someone is always checking the barrels, just in case this is the day someone actually makes it out. But by nightfall, everyone returns to their usual places. The candles flicker. The floor creaks. Brutus settles in with a sigh, and the goat curls up in the exact spot where escape plans go to die. Every brothel has its ghost stories. They're as essential to the atmosphere as the drafty windows, the questionable stew, and the goat who eats important documents. Ghost tales help pass the long nights, entertain new workers, and explain any noise no one wants to investigate. And in a building as old and as overworked as this one, there is never a shortage of strange sounds. The most famous ghost is the unpaid guest. No one remembers when he supposedly lived, only that he left without settling his bill. Some say he was a merchant, others insist he was a shy farm boy. A few swear he was a nobleman in disguise, fleeing scandal. Regardless of the version, the ending is the same. He vanished into the night, and the madam cursed him so thoroughly that his spirit now wanders the halls, rattling his empty purse and sighing dramatically. On stormy nights, people claim they hear the faint jingle of coins from no identifiable source. It's probably just the draft, but that never stopped anyone from telling the story again. Then there's the tale of the lovesick monk. According to legend, he came for a bowl of stew, but fell hopelessly in love with a worker named Marjorie. Every brothel has a Marjorie, and every ghost story involves one. The monk never confessed his feelings, never returned to the monastery, and never really left the brothel. Workers say he lingers in the corners, whispering sappy things no one wants to hear. If you feel your blanket tug at night, it could be him. Or it could be the goat. No one investigates. Mystery is easier. Another spirit is the weeping lady. She lives in the attic, if the stories are to be believed, mourning a lost romance or possibly her last paycheck. On the coldest nights, the air upstairs turns icy. Workers refuse to go there alone, and even the cats avoid the attic on certain evenings. If the temperature drops suddenly, someone always mutters, "She's awake." It's unclear whether they mean the ghost or the draft, but the effect is the same. The poltergeists are far more annoying. They're blamed for every missing sock, overturned bucket, misplaced ladle, and suspicious puddle on the floor. Some say these spirits play tricks. They hide keys, they move coins, they rearrange the curtains so the draft hits you exactly in the face. Once, someone found the madam's prized hair comb balancing perfectly on top of a broom. Everyone blamed ghosts. The madam blamed the apprentices. Of course, not all unexplained events are supernatural. Rats make plenty of noise, particularly at night. They scurry in the walls, steal crumbs, and whisper among themselves like a council of tiny politicians. When workers hear something skittering around after midnight, they often say, "Ghosts again," because that sounds more dignified than admitting they lost an argument with rodents over ownership of a stale crust of bread. Some ghost stories exist simply because brothel life offers more mysteries than answers. There are stains on the walls that no one can identify. There are creaks in the floor that happen even when nobody's walking. There are sudden cold spots that appear in the middle of summer. When customers ask about these things, the staff shrug and say, "Old building," or "cursed love," or the ever-popular, "Don't worry about it." But despite all the haunting claims, the truth is comforting. Whether or not the ghosts are real, the stories bind everyone together. They're told in low voices over weak ale, retold with dramatic flair during storms, and whispered to apprentices to initiate them into the chaos. Ghost stories remind everyone that no matter how loud the nights get, No matter how unpredictable the customers are, no matter how many times the goat eats the laundry, there's always a tale to share. Something to laugh about, something to blame when a sock goes missing. And in a place where privacy is an illusion and sleep is a luxury, sometimes a good ghost story is the closest thing anyone gets to normal. Birthdays in a medieval brothel are not glamorous occasions. They are not planned weeks in advance, and no one remembers the exact dates anyway. People here measure their birthdays the way they measure the seasons, vaguely, approximately, and mostly by how cold it was when they were born. A worker might say, "My birthday is sometime around the first frost," or, "My mother said the chickens were laying 2 eggs a day, so it must have been spring." That's as precise as it gets. But lack of precision doesn't stop anyone from celebrating. The brothel throws birthdays whenever someone remembers them, or when morale is low, or when the madam decides people need a distraction from arguing about who stole the last onion. Someone will suddenly clap their hands and say, "Isn't it your birthday this week?" And the next thing you know, the entire house is preparing for a celebration no one asked for, but everyone needs. The festivities begin in secrecy, which is impressive because secrets rarely survive here. Someone sneaks into the kitchen to find a loaf that is only slightly stale. Someone else digs through boxes for the birthday crown, a hand-sewn creation made from old ribbons, wilted flowers, and whatever scraps looked festive last year. It never fits the guest of honor. Even when adjusted, it tilts dramatically to one side, making the wearer look like they've just survived a light windstorm. Then comes the cake. Calling it a cake is generous. It's more like a creative reimagining of bread. The kitchen staff scrape off the worst of last week's crumbs, dust the top with flour to make it look intentional, and stick a candle or a vaguely candlestick-shaped twig into the center. If someone finds a raisin and adds it, people gasp like they've witnessed a miracle. At the birthday moment, everyone gathers in the common room. Customers, workers, the madam, the animals, no one is excluded. Even the goat attends, usually hovering near the cake with predatory interest. Brutus, the dog, goes around sniffing each participant as if making sure they're not hiding a better dessert. The madam opens the celebration with a speech. Her speeches are always the same mixture of heartfelt admiration and thinly veiled threats. "We celebrate your existence," she says with a firm nod, "and may you continue to work hard, avoid causing fires, and stop misplacing the chamber pot." The room applauds politely. Then comes the singing. It is never in tune, never rehearsed, and always twice as long as necessary. Someone inevitably starts singing too early. Someone else keeps singing after everyone else has stopped. The goat occasionally joins in with a noise that is either enthusiastic or deeply offended. Party games follow. Brothel games are unlike any other. Pin the tail on the goat. Dangerous, never recommended, often attempted. Guess who ate the last apple? Everyone lies, no one wins. The goat is usually guilty. Ale relay. Participants carry mugs through the room without spilling, which is impossible because someone always trips over Brutus. Prizes are modest, an extra scrap of soap, a piece of string, or permission to skip latrine duty for one evening. Once, the madam awarded a mysterious brass key found under the floorboards. No one has figured out what it opens, but everyone keeps trying locks whenever they're bored. The celebration always ends the same way, with stories. Workers reminisce about past birthdays, each tale slightly more exaggerated than the last. Someone recalls the year the mayor showed up drunk and tried to juggle turnips. Someone else brings up the time a candle set the tablecloth on fire, and the birthday worker blew it out with a dramatic flourish that nearly earned them applause. When the candles burn low and the ale runs out, the night slowly fades back into normal brothel chaos. The crown is returned to its box. The leftover cake is devoured by Brutus or stolen by the goat. The birthday worker removes the tilted crown, sighs with relief, and gets back to their shift. Birthdays here are chaotic, short-lived, loud, and messy. But they're also warm in a way few things in the brothel are. For a brief moment, everyone stops complaining, stops stealing, stops arguing over stew ingredients, and simply celebrates the fact that they're still alive, still together, and still capable of laughing at the absurdity of their lives. In a place like this, that is more valuable than any present. Family visits are the natural enemy of the medieval brothel. Nothing disrupts the rhythm of a perfectly chaotic day like a relative suddenly appearing at the door, clutching a sack of laundry, and the kind of expression that says, "I'm here out of concern, but really means, I want answers I'm not prepared to hear. The trouble begins the moment someone hears an unfamiliar knock, too hesitant to be a customer, too polite to be the tax collector, and too confused to be the lute player. A worker peeks through the gap in the door, sees a worried aunt, an overly cheerful cousin, or, worst of all, a parent holding pie, and immediately whispers the alarm. Family. Within seconds, the brothel initiates a full-scale transformation, faster than any nobleman trying to deny a scandal. People tidy tables, hide incriminating objects, and swap outfits. The house's most notorious flirt suddenly becomes the assistant cook. The gambler becomes the night bookkeeper. The loudest worker pretends to be shy, and someone always grabs an apron as if that alone can erase every questionable decision they've ever made. Even Brutus senses the tension and positions himself in the corner with solemn dignity, pretending he has never once stolen a loaf of bread or sat on top of the laundry. The visiting relative is ushered inside as though they are royalty or a very powerful inspector. They look around, politely confused, taking in the slightly crooked curtains, the uneven chairs, and the suspicious number of chickens wandering freely. They don't ask questions yet. They save those for when they've had a good look at everyone's faces. Introductions become a masterclass in improvisation. This is Marjorie, someone announces. She's in charge of candles. And this is Will. He, fixes structural things. What kind of structural things? The aunt asks. All of them, Will says, nodding with the confidence of someone who absolutely cannot list a single structural thing. Relatives always ask questions, soft ones at first. Are you eating well? How's your health? Do you sleep much? Then slightly sharper ones. Do you always wear that apron? Why does the dog have his own chair? Is that man over there singing to a chicken? Everyone tries to redirect the conversation. They bring up the weather, the market, the price of onions, anything safer than the truth. If things get desperate, someone shouts from the kitchen, "Oh no, the stew is boiling over," even when there is clearly no stew boiling and the kitchen door is firmly closed. Dinner with visiting relatives is chaos in its purest form. The cook tries to make the pottage look more presentable, maybe adding an herb or two for decoration. The goat attempts to sit in someone's lap. The chickens argue loudly under the table. And the relative, trying very hard to be polite, says something like, "This is hearty," while trying to identify 3 different floating objects with increasing concern. After dinner comes the tour. No one ever wants to give the tour, but someone must. They lead the relative past the rooms carefully, skipping anything too questionable. They avoid the drafty hallway, the storage corner where 2 workers are whisper fighting, and any door behind which an unmistakable crash has just occurred. They instead point out things like, "This window opens. This chair is newish. This wall used to be worse." Inevitably, the relative asks to see the guest book. The staff have already hidden it. No one wants a family member flipping through pages filled with fake names, doodles, questionable poetry, and a drawing of the goat labeled "Possible Demon." When the visit finally ends, everyone gathers behind the door, listening for the sound of fading footsteps. Once the coast is clear, they collapse into collective relief. Someone fans themselves dramatically, someone else pours a drink. Brutus resumes his natural shape, sprawling across the floor. The goat chews on something he definitely wasn't given. Afterward, the workers discuss the visit like it was a major political summit. She almost asked what my job is. My uncle tried to pet the goat. They saw the stew pot. I think they know too much. They laugh, complain, and share the leftover pie that arrived with the relative. It's never very good pie, but it tastes like survival and mild emotional triumph. Family visits are awkward, exhausting, and unforgettable. But they're also oddly bonding. They remind everyone that despite the chaos, the noise, and the mysterious stains no one can explain, they've built a strange little world together. And in that world, the only rule is, never let a relative look behind the wrong curtain. The brothel isn't the only chaotic establishment in town. Just up the street, around the corner, and inconveniently close enough to share customers, stand the rival houses. Each one with its own madam, its own rules, and its own loyal workers ready to swear theirs is superior, cleaner, and absolutely not infested with chickens. These claims are universally false. Competition between brothels is fierce, petty, and constant. No one fights honorably. This isn't a knightly duel. This is a turf war fought with stolen laundry, swapped signboards, and pranks so elaborate they sometimes qualify as crimes. The rivalry usually starts quietly. Someone notices their sign looks shinier than usual. Someone else finds a familiar-looking apron drying on the wrong laundry line. Suspicion blooms. The staff gather, whispering theories and glaring vaguely in every direction. Eventually, someone mutters, "It's the house next door. I know it." One legendary incident involved a rival brothel replacing our sign with one that read, "Spiritual cleansing and honest fun." Customers wandered in asking for sermons. Meanwhile, our own sign was found 3 streets away, decorated with a mustache and the phrase, "All chickens welcome," painted in a cheerful shade of blue. No one confessed. Everyone smirked. Laundry theft is another battlefield. Rivals snatch undergarments, stockings, tunics, even the good aprons, the ones without holes. Nothing starts a day of chaos faster than discovering your best shirt proudly displayed on a stranger's balcony. And the worst insult isn't theft, it's alteration. Imagine finding your favorite petticoat returned with a different perfume and a patch sewn over your initials. That's war. Pranks escalate quickly. One time, a rival brothel sent over a basket of apples as a peace offering. Each apple had been hollowed out and stuffed with pickled onions. In retaliation, someone here filled their privy with a sack of frogs. The noise was horrifying. The smell was worse. The revenge was satisfying. The goat, naturally, plays a role in these rivalries. He has wandered into enemy territory more than once, usually returning with something that was definitely not originally his. There was also the infamous blue goat incident, when rivals dyed their goat bright blue and paraded him through the street. The goat looked outraged, which only made the spectacle funnier. It took 2 months for the color to fade. Festival days turn the rivalry into a full public spectacle. Brothel workers line up across from each other in the street, forming an impromptu stage for singing contests, dancing battles, and competitions that defy common sense. They boast loudly about the softness of their beds, the quality of their ale, and the attractiveness of their co-workers. These boasts are rarely accurate, but always entertaining. The singing battles are legendary. 2 groups face off, belting out bawdy ballads and improvised insults with the enthusiasm of people who have nothing to lose. Someone inevitably throws a piece of bread. Someone else throws another person. Crowds gather. Bets are placed. Brutus usually takes the stage at some point, howling along and winning the contest by default. During festivals, pranks peak. Water barrels get spiked with something so sour it makes an entire crowd pucker. Ale mugs are replaced with mismatched shoes. Once, someone swapped all the candles with rushlights coated in something that smoked terribly. The entire street smelled like burning disappointment for a week. Despite the rivalry, there's an odd kind of camaraderie. The madams sometimes share drinks late at night, comparing notes about the worst customers and the most baffling stains. Workers from competing houses sometimes help each other when the church patrol shows up unexpectedly. Nothing unites 2 enemies faster than mutually avoiding religious condemnation. At the core of it, rivalries keep things lively. The townsfolk enjoy the spectacle. The workers enjoy the mischief. The madams enjoy pretending they disapprove. And everyone secretly enjoys the thrill of outsmarting, or being outsmarted by, the neighbors. The brothels may be competitors, but deep down, they're also siblings in chaos, bonded by shared disasters, shared customers, and shared grudges that never fully resolve. And when the next festival comes around, everyone knows exactly where they'll be, standing across the street from each other, ready to sing, dance, bicker, and steal laundry all over again. Because in this town, rivalry isn't just tradition, it's entertainment. Every few months, a new apprentice arrives at the brothel, wide-eyed, clutching their one decent tunic, and radiating the misplaced optimism of someone who still believes the world is fair. The regular workers watch this newcomer the way a group of seasoned sailors watches someone step onto a ship for the first time, fond, sympathetic, and quietly taking bets on how long they'll last. The initiation process is not formal. It is chaos disguised as education. The apprentice is shown their living quarters, which is usually a corner of a room, a straw mattress that crunches ominously, and a blanket that has clearly lived 9 lives already. The madam explains the house rules in a tone that has no room for negotiation. No free services, no borrowing without returning, no feeding the goat after sunset, and never trust a window latch that looks mostly fine. Then, the real instruction begins. 2 older workers take the apprentice aside and share everything the madam didn't. Don't leave your shoes unattended. Don't let the cook talk you into tasting anything experimental. Don't sit on the good chair near the hearth unless you want the rooster to challenge you for it. Always shake your blanket before lying down. And if you hear singing after midnight, do not investigate unless you wish to witness something you'll never emotionally recover from. Their first assignment is usually dish duty or errands. It's meant to be simple. It never is. In the kitchen, the apprentice meets the cook, a terrifyingly efficient human with forearms like battering rams and a tendency to predict people's futures by examining vegetable scraps. The cook hands them a spoon as long as their arm and tells them to stir the pottage. They stir. Things bubble that should not bubble. Something shifts at the bottom of the pot that may or may not still be alive. The apprentice pretends to be brave. The cook pretends to believe them. Serving drinks is even worse. Customers wave them over with the exaggerated confidence of people who've had too much ale and too few life lessons. The apprentice learns to dodge unsolicited hugs, unexpected songs, and hands that wander like confused moths. They try balancing mugs while weaving between tables, only to trip over Brutus, who has decided that the exact center of the floor is the ideal place for a nap. Then comes livestock management. No one warns them about this part. A chicken escapes the pantry every evening. The goat insists on testing every new person by chewing an item of clothing they care about. The rooster picks one unlucky soul each night to antagonize. The apprentice discovers all of this in the span of 1 hour. By the time midnight rolls around, they are exhausted, confused, and covered in a mixture of ale, feathers, and something they hope is gravy. And the night isn't over. A customer begins singing a ballad so aggressively off-key that even the madam winces. Someone drops a tray of bread, sending half the workers scrambling like starved raccoons. A brawl almost starts, but fizzles out when the participants forget why they were angry. The goat knocks over a bucket. A broom falls in the hallway. A window slams from the draft. The apprentice jerks awake repeatedly, convinced everything is an emergency. Eventually, the madam appears for inspection. She looks the apprentice up and down, disheveled hair, wrinkled tunic, eyes filled with the 1,000-yard stare of someone who has seen too much, and gives a single approving nod. You survived. Good. Be here again tomorrow. No one ever forgets their first night. It is a rite of passage, a trial by spilled ale and emotional damage. The moment the apprentice realizes the brothel is less of a building and more of a living creature, one that never sleeps, never apologizes, and never stops producing new surprises. But something else happens too. Amid the chaos, someone offers them a spare lace for their torn sleeve. Someone else hands them half a bread crust. Brutus lets them sit next to him, and the goat only bites them once. By dawn, the apprentice understands the brothel better than any explanation could teach. It is overwhelming, unpredictable, occasionally violent, often ridiculous, and strangely, deeply communal. And if they can survive the first night, they just might survive the next 1,000. When a storm hits a medieval brothel, the whole building reacts like a ship that knows it was never designed to sail. The first rumble of thunder sends everyone into motion. Not coordinated motion, more like frantic scrambling from people who have absolutely no faith in the roof and only slightly more faith in the walls. Rain starts leaking through the ceiling almost immediately. Water finds every crack, every forgotten hole, and every spot that someone swore last week was definitely fixed now. Buckets appear out of nowhere. Pots, pans, bowls, mugs, anything that can catch falling water gets dragged into place. The floor turns into a maze, and anyone who tries to navigate it ends up performing a complicated dance that involves hopping, cursing, slipping, and occasionally apologizing to a chicken. The rushes on the floor soak through within minutes. Mud begins migrating across the room like it has somewhere to be. Customers track more of it inside. Someone shouts about their socks being wet. Someone else shouts back that they're lucky to even have socks. Lighting becomes a group responsibility. Every candle in the house is lit to fight the creeping darkness, though each flame flickers dramatically every time the wind squeezes through a crack. The room glows in uneven patches, bright where someone dared to double-wick a lamp, and dim where the draft insists on bullying the candles. Shadows jump across the walls, making the whole place look faintly haunted, which, honestly, isn't much different from normal. Brutus hates storms. He hides behind the firewood or positions himself under a table like an oversized, emotionally fragile loaf of bread. He glares every time thunder booms, as if the sky is being rude on purpose. Meanwhile, the goat treats the storm like a personal adventure and climbs onto the highest available furniture. From his elevated throne, he surveys the misery below with smug satisfaction. Upstairs, people fight over the driest sleeping spots. Every inch of halfway dry floor is bartered for. Tomorrow's bread crust, a spare lace, a promise to take someone's shift cleaning the privy. If someone secures a desirable corner by the hearth, they defend it like a dragon defending gold. Entire alliances form and dissolve within minutes over who gets which patch of floor. The madam becomes a general in command of a hopeless army. She wields her mop like a weapon and orders workers to reinforce windows, sweep water away from doorways, and stop standing around complaining. Every few minutes, she shouts something like, "If that bucket overflows one more time, someone is sleeping in the stable," which is punishment because the stable is somehow even wetter. Once the initial chaos settles, people gather together, huddled in blankets, sharing stories. Storm nights are when the best tales come out. Someone tells a ghost story. Someone else adds an unnecessary detail that makes it worse. The candle flickers at the exact wrong moment. A draft makes the curtains billow dramatically. The apprentice screams. Everyone else pretends not to be startled. Ale flows more freely during storms, not because it's available, but because it's morale. The pottage simmers in the background, thicker than usual because the cook refuses to leave the hearth during weather like this. Every so often she announces, "It needs more turning," even though she hasn't added anything to it for 2 hours. People laugh more during storms too. It's hard not to. When the building groans like a tired old horse, when the goat slips off a table, when a bucket overflows for the 3rd time, when Brutus attempts to climb onto someone's lap for reassurance, misery turns into bonding. Nothing brings people closer than collectively realizing the roof might not survive the night. By dawn, the storm begins to fade. The leaks slow, the wind softens, the sky turns gray instead of black. The brothel smells like wet wood, wet straw, wet dog, and a hint of wet goat. But it stands, barely, stubbornly, defiantly. And everyone who weathered the storm together staggers into breakfast feeling like survivors of something epic, even if the rest of the world never hears about it. Storm nights remind everyone of a simple truth. The brothel may be drafty, battered, creaking, leaking, and half held together with luck, but it endures, and so do the people in it. And that, more than anything, is why this absurd, chaotic, ridiculous place becomes a kind of home.